You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So we're all aware, inflation, it feels like it's there. It feels like it might be here for a little bit longer than short term. Could the Federal Reserve and could the White House, could they be wrong about inflation? That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to cover a CNN business article. Oof. How's this going to go? Don't know, but that's why we're here and we're going to give it a shot. We're talking about inflation because this is one of those things that everybody has in the back of their head. Oh, right. This feels like inflation, but we're being told the numbers here are low and they're not expected. And whatever temporary numbers that we have that are elevated, they're just that. They're just temporary because the economy is emerging from the pandemic. Although we're told to wear a mask, if you're vaccinated, still wear a mask indoors because you're doing something. Craziness, right? California mask mandate is just insanity. Let's work on something that we can actually wrap our head around. Inflation. All bets are off if the Fed and the White House are wrong about inflation. That's what we're jumping into today. If you're new here, my name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies. So I'm going to talk about inflation because that impacts real estate. I think all the money the Fed is pumping into buying these securities have really kept interest rates low. I know they have. We're buying back how many billions of dollars and all kinds of stuff that are keeping the rates low. Yeah, that's a thing for real estate. That's why we're talking about this. All right. So did I do my intro? I'm Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies and I read the news. There you go. Let's do this. The White House and the Federal Reserve broadly agree inflation isn't here to stay. No, that stuff you see there, it's not long-term. It's temporary. We know it. We feel it. We're never wrong about anything. Red hot prices will cool off as the U.S. economy reopens. Most economists seem to concur that inflation is transitory. As the Fed puts it, investors aren't freaking out either about the biggest price hike since 2008. I'm freaking out a little bit. I don't know about you. Anytime I see this kind of stuff, I'm like, oh, that's probably not good. And I don't think it's as transitory as people are making this out to be. But I've been wrong a lot. So I could be wrong on this one too. But I keep reading these articles. It's temporary. And I'm kind of thinking, I don't know. A portion of it is because we've got these crazy numbers coming from we're not in business to let's go wide open. And I think some of that is there. But other stuff, the other tools, the governmental tools that we're using to keep interest rates down and keep the economy propped up, I think they might need to be adjusted sooner than later. But again, I'm 52 and I don't have the same perspective as everybody. That's just what's going on. Maybe that's why you're here. Don't know. Thank you for being here. What do you guys think? I'm going to go on a tangent here before I read the third paragraph. What do you guys think when you hear the words OnlyFans? This has been a discussion that's come up a lot. We're not getting an OnlyFans account. Trust me. Nobody wants to see that. But it is an option when you're looking at alternative platforms, when your information is, not being pushed out. One of those things. OnlyFans. Have you heard of it? Maybe you haven't heard of it. Do you have an OnlyFans account? Are you paying for content elsewhere that's only for fans? Let me know. Patreon's also another option that we're looking at pretty hard. But the stakes, and we're not looking at OnlyFans as an option, just to be clear. But the stakes couldn't be much higher here. If the consensus is wrong, as it sometimes is, and inflation remains uncomfortably high, it could threaten the economic recovery, the stock market boom, and even the Biden agenda. That's why I think you're still going to see the Fed doing its thing, just printing money like there's no tomorrow. It still screams transitory to us, said Stephanie Roth, system markets economist at JP Private Bank. If we're wrong, it could shorten the economic cycle that we're in. All right. And in doing so, that wouldn't necessarily be good, would it? In other words, the Fed would need to cool inflation off by swiftly raising interest rates. Higher borrowing costs would slow or even derail the economic recovery. Okay. We're clearly not going to go in that direction, but I still think we need the brakes touch just a tad, just a little wonk, wonk, wonk. You know what I mean? Doesn't that seem reasonable? Maybe not even adjust anything. Just talk about it a little bit. Just talk. That's all the Fed has to do. And the market goes, we've got changes coming, and they automatically adjust. At the same time, high inflation and higher rates would make it harder for President Joe Biden to enact sweeping infrastructure and social safety net programs costing more than $4 trillion. Good Lord. Every time I turn around, there's $1.9 trillion, $2 trillion. We're just printing money and sending it out the window, aren't we? The Fed is playing a game of chicken that they're going to lose, said Peter Boockvar, Chief Investment Officer at Bleakley Advisory Group. I think the Fed will be wrong on inflation being temporary. I kind of do too. What do I have that base on? Just doing this forever and looking at the market and going, this feels more than transitory. That's what I keep telling myself. Boockvar said the Fed should move soon to exit its emergency stance because waiting too long will make it that much harder to ease inflation without slowing the economy. They don't want to be playing catch up, he said. Some leaders and playing catch up with slowing the economy because that becomes kind of an out of control freight train. And it's like, we making any progress? No, keep bumping those rates or whatever. Stop purchasing whatever. You can't play catch up all that well is the bottom line, right? It's hard to do. Some leaders but then again, it's also hard to time the market. All right at this point right here, we enact our measures. That's very difficult. And you got so much politics in there now too, right? I mean, there's some politicking going on, some crazy stuff. I'm going to go here really quickly. Did you see President Joe Biden's last Wednesday town hall? Oof. Wow. That was something else. If you haven't seen, go to YouTube and look up any given clip on that bad boy. How about the first question? Have you experienced anything, crazy as president of the White House? Yeah, people tell me to close doors. Okay, this is a press conference. This is what we're talking about. This is the insight that we get from the fearless leader of the free world. Okay. All right. And then some of those answers, I wasn't able to follow along. Maybe you guys are able, better to follow along. But when I sat there and heard the answers given to said questions, yeah. Let's read the news. Some leaders on Wall Street, including BlackRock CEO Larry Fink and JP Morgan Chase boss Jamie Dimon, have similarly warned in recent weeks that inflation may not be temporary. The Delta variant and used car prices. That's our next segment here. Because who doesn't want to combine those two topics in a paragraph? The good news is that inflation fears have eased a bit in recent weeks, although not necessarily for positive reasons. The summer spike in COVID-19 cases, driven by the Delta variant, threatens to slow the booming economy. That in turn could cool off surging demand, suggesting inflationary pressures could ease, at least in the short run. In fact, COVID variants have surpassed inflation as the top risk-facing markets, according to a July 21 through 23rd survey of market professionals released by Deutsche Bank on Monday. COVID variants. Man, do you remember at the beginning of the whole Rona deal last March? No, it was probably last February, wasn't it? 2 Februaries ago now. Wow, that's quick. You remember the market just getting rocked. Stock market had these massive gyrations. And everybody was like, what the F is going on there? Wow, what is happening there? Market was reacting to word of the coronavirus. It was kind of coming out. And then it hit mainstream as far as the information. And then we had the life, whatever it was, here in Kirkland. A bunch of people died. And then we were off to the races. 15 days to slow the curve. Turned into a year and a half, right? Wear a mask. Don't wear a mask. Wear a mask. Don't wear a mask. Vaccinated people, wear a mask indoors. Got all this stuff going on, right? In fact, COVID variants have surpassed inflation as the top risk. Already read that. The risks have shifted towards growth being more disappointing than expected. That gives me confidence that inflation shouldn't be a problem, said JP Morgan's Roth. She pointed to how the recent spike in consumer prices is being driven mostly by several factors like used cars that are already showing signs of cooling off. Well, yes, but you're still tweaking the economy to such a point that I think we've got some inflation here that's more than transitory, right? When you strip down those components out, inflation looks far less scary. All right, so you're going to take out all the elements that are creating said inflation. And when you get rid of those, it's good. It's fine. I mean, nothing to worry about. Do you see kind of the lack in logic there? Because those elements of inflation are existing and they're existing for a reason. And there's other stuff in there as well, right? And I am paraphrasing this. These are some massive economic issues we're dealing with here. And I'm just kind of reducing them to basically a quick byline kind of deal. The International Monetary Fund is urging central bankers not to overreact for a few months of hot prices. Central banks should generally look through transitory inflationary pressures and avoid tightening until there is more clarity on underlying price dynamics. In other words, we don't really know. Let's wait and see. That's what we're saying here. Yeah, I mean, could be short term, could be long term. God, what if the Fed and what if the White House were wrong? Oh, can't have that. However, the International Monetary Fund acknowledges that there is a risk that transitory pressures could become more persistent and central banks may need to take preemptive action. So what are we saying here? We're saying we don't know. That's essentially what we're saying. Yeah, we've never really been in this spot before. Economy coming out of a lockdown. We can't get those chips for cars. Used cars are selling for more than new cars are selling for. I mean, can't get the chips. A lot of stuff going on, right? We are raising prices everywhere. I will agree with that. I did go to Costco yesterday. Still some decent buys at Costco. GoPro Hero 9 package deal, $369. If you want a GoPro, go out and get a Hero 9. It's a damn good camera. It's got the forward-facing screen. You don't care about that because you don't really need one, but I think they're cool. And they do some cool stuff like hyperlapse video, time-lapse video. I mean, you can go from hyperlapse video into real-time video, back to hyperlapse, back to real, just with the press of a button on the back of the screen. It's cool. Get one. Film your grandkids, whatever it is you do. Film your dog. Pretty cool stuff. We are raising, and they shoot in 5K. That's good. We are raising prices everywhere. Some leading companies signaled Tuesday that they are passing rising costs along to consumers, suggesting at least some inflation will stick around. I think more than some inflation is going to stick around. Industry raw material inflation is more significant and sustained than originally anticipated, Sherwin-Williams CEO John Morikis said in a paint company's earnings release. Sherwin-Williams paint, that's some damn fine paint. If you've used a lot of paint, you will know the difference between Sherwin-Williams. I also like Rodden. No, I'm not a Rodden fan. That's old. I don't even think you can get that anymore. The paint at Home Depot, I'm not a fan of. I think it's runny and it doesn't smooth out. There's a couple of other paints, but Sherwin-Williams, it's smooth paint. I like the way that it goes on. Give me a little eggshell. Give me some eggshell. I'm just making up finishes now. Maybe a little bit of high gloss. Sherwin-Williams said it is confident it can offer higher costs through its previously announced price hikes. We are prepared to implement additional increases should they become necessary. All right, to mitigate the impact of rising costs, General Electric said it is raising prices across the board and taking other steps. So everybody is raising their prices because they have to. Everything has had a price adjustment. Everything costs more. Gasoline, very expensive in some areas. I mean, just, wow, that is not cheap. Executives at Post-it maker 3M simply said, we are raising prices everywhere. All right. So the question being, is this long-term or short-term? Do we need to start adjusting now? I think you need to start talking about it, but even talk rocks the markets, right? None of those comments help the transitory inflation case. Liz Young, head of investment strategy at SoFi, thinks its inflation will cool off, yet settle into a level high enough that they force the Fed to act sooner than people expect. That's what I think will happen. Yep. The assumption that the Fed won't raise rates until 2023 is way too far off, Young said. Who knows what will happen in 2022, right? Those midterm elections? It'd be interesting. Indeed, traders now see a 51% chance of it. 51, not 50, not 49, not 52. 51% chance of at least one interest rate hike by the end of next year. All right. So slightly better than 50-50 that the Fed will do a rate hike by the end of next year. That's interesting. That's what we need to keep an eye on right there, right? There's a lot to be humble about. Another risk is that high inflation slows the economy down. I'm concerned about stagflation, said Daniel DiMartino Booth, CEO and chief strategist at Quill Intelligence. That toxic combination of slowing growth and rising prices is a real risk here. All right, so here's another perspective. Stagflation. There was a whiff of stagflation in the latest housing numbers with sticker shock pricing some Americans out of the market. New home sales unexpectedly fell in June for the third month in a row, slipping to the weakest pace since April 2020. Existing home sales declined 4 months in a row before ticking up in June. I think you've got a housing market that's been on fire for so long that it's just petering out on its own. And you've got price levels that are going to take some time for the market to catch up, because the market is saying, there's not a lot of affordable inventory out here, and people are not, in many, many markets, able to compete. I was reading a story about a young family. Are we even supposed to say that anymore? Family? Is family outlawed? F is for family. It's a Bill Burr show. Very funny. Not appropriate, but funny. I was reading a news article about a family in Sydney that had put away, young family, young kids. They had put away $250,000, and they weren't having any $250,000 towards a down payment deposit, they call it in Sydney, in Australia, because they've got a different way of selling houses there. You have an auction in the backyard, and an auctioneer just whips up interest, and then boom, the house sells, and you basically close, and it's a different process than here in the United States. But young family with kids put together a $250,000 down payment. That's a lot of money. And they still weren't having any luck getting a house. Even up to like $1.8 million is what they were looking at. They weren't coming up with anything because they were getting outbid and price was getting run up. The market's just gotten out of control. And that's somebody with $250,000 down payment. Granted, it's one of the most expensive cities in the world. In housing, what did it have? In the first 6 months of 2021, they had over 20 homes that sold over $20 million or something like that. Just some incredible statistic. It's like, well, that's a lot of people with a lot of money buying a lot of really overpriced real estate. I threw in the overpriced because I think anything over 20 million bucks is overpriced because it's not relative to the rest of what we do, which is housing as a roof over your head. A similar story. So existing home sales declined 4 months in a row before ticking up in June. And my whole point to this last little explanation is that you've got a market that's stalling out on its own because it's like, we've been going for too long. We need a little slowdown. I think you'll see an uptick in fall, but this is one of those times where, people are focused on getting out, having some fun, trying to figure out whether they wear the mask or not wear the mask, take that vacation before school. Maybe their kids are actually going back to school this fall. I think people are doing that stuff right now. Here we are, late July. That's what's going on. And people are taking a break from house hunting because it's been brutal, and maybe they're priced out of the market. You're seeing a lot of that. You're seeing some more inventory come on, but the market's still pretty strong. It's not taking a big break, but it's taking a little one. Similar stories playing out in the auto market where sales have slowed after months of blistering price gains. That is truly a supply issue, right? No inventory. Got all these cars waiting for their microchips. Can't ship them. Yeah, we'll follow up with that microchip later. Good luck starting that car. Stagflation, defined as a period of slow growth and rising prices, is a nightmare for central bankers because both rate hikes and rate cuts can make one part of the problem worse. Hopefully, stagflation concerns are overdone and inflation eases in the coming months, as the Fed expects. That would allow the recovery to continue and the United States to move closer to full employment. Got a weird thing with that whole Fed unemployment benefit, $300 a week, right? It's still out there. Some places are so short on workers that they're saying, yeah, no, that Fed deal, we're not doing that. Because there's no incentive for these workers to take jobs in these kind of economies. It's not happening. And then yet at the same time, we're being told we need to move closer to full employment. It's also important to remember that economic forecasts, including ones from the Fed, can turn out to be not just wrong, but very wrong. Good Lord, is that true? Could the Federal Reserve be wrong? They've never been wrong before, have they? Wait, they have. A lot. You're doing what? Why are you doing that? Whatever. I can't think about this too much because it drives me crazy. Sometimes the stuff the Fed does, you're like, that is some sheer nonsense. Other times you're like, oh, okay, well, that's hedging your bets there. But over the years, we've had some interesting actions by the Fed. There's a lot to be humble about, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said last month. It's a highly uncertain business. That's what I'm going to leave you with. That's the ending concept here. We don't know. It's a highly uncertain business. We might have to raise rates. We might have to bring them down. We're not really sure. Things could go either way. Inflation might be here for short term, might be here for midterm, it might be here for long term. Slightly greater than 50-50 chance that we're going to have to raise rates before the end of 2022. Do these things all sound like a massive hedge on a bet? They are, because we don't really know. We're just guessing. And when you talk about the White House and the Federal Reserve possibly being wrong, that could happen too. And I think it will happen. But, we always, no matter if you got some high inflation, all right, yeah, prices are going to go through the roof like they are right now. Everything's going up. Is there anything that's cheaper now? I don't think so. Is there anything? I can't really think of it. Lumber has gone down. That's gone down a lot. 40% drop? But the prices, the wholesale prices have dropped a lot. Retail prices, not quite as much as far as what I understand. But yeah, everything seems to have a price tag associated with it. And that's what makes me think, all right, we've got more than a little bit of inflation going on here. And it's probably a little bit more than what the Fed is letting us be aware of. Is it enough to warrant the Fed actually doing something? That's where I'm just going to waffle and say, yeah, don't know, but I kind of feel like we're more on the position of needing to be proactive and kind of take a look at the inflation than just to kick back and go, oh, yeah, it's temporary. Don't worry about that. Let's just watch the Olympics. Have you guys watched any of the Olympics? After some of the ridiculousness like kneeling during the national anthem, hard no-go for me. Hard no-go. Kind of like watching the NBA. Used to be an enormous NBA fan. Not so much the last couple of years. Just can't really, that whole kneeling, walking out of the national anthem, people getting worked up over seeing the flag. They're saying it's reminding them of January 6th. Flag's been used in a lot of things, a lot of classrooms, you've got a flag hanging up on the wall. If you walk into an elementary school classroom and you see a flag hanging on the wall, does that remind you of January 6th as well? Because if it does, you got some issues. Yeah, I can't really get into the whole Olympics this year. I'm almost like personally boycotting it. But for some reason, I didn't really care that our basketball team lost. Didn't really care that our soccer team lost. I'm okay with the soccer team just being blitzed, women's soccer team. Stunts they've pulled, not on board with that. This is the Olympics, folks. Take your national pride seriously. Put away all that other stuff. It's ridiculous. It's not, Olympics are not the place to do that. But apparently they are. And that's what I find really annoying. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Until the next time we meet, stay safe. We'll talk then. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.